Guys, what is the world coming to? I saw two stories yesterday. One I think took place in the Bronx. A young man shot his mom in the head because she was on him after she was on him to get a job. The other story I saw, and please forgive me, I don't want to offend anyone, but you don't hear stories like this in the black community. It is a first for me. I'm not saying you've never heard this, but I've never heard this in this way. A young boy, 17, killed 6 family members, including an unborn child. The woman who was pregnant was near their due date. Supposedly, this all sparked from an argument about the boy going out, and he killed them at around 4 in the morning. And the way it was found out was that the younger brother had survived, gotten away, and was found injured. And he went and told, I guess, at the hospital that the brother had killed everyone in the house. Okay? So, with that, I want to give a little, I guess I would say, lesson on my opinion about why this is happening. And, in my opinion, the original sin, which is now coming back full circle in a sense with the original sin. There's a relation, there's a mirror image, if you will. For those of us who for those of you who are listening to this and you don't believe in the Bible, you don't believe in God, bear with me, hear me out. I have a reason for this. Let me know if it makes sense. So, what is the original sin? It is the desire to be like God. How do we know this? Because the serpent came to Eve and tempted her, and that's pretty much what he tempted her with. They were not supposed to of the tree, eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. And he told her the reason for this was that God knew that if they ate that fruit, that they would be like him. And I'm going to go into what is meant by that. Now, what is the fruit? Do we think there was a literal fruit eaten? No, I don't. So let's think about trees and what the scripture says regarding trees. I'll give 2 examples. A tree will be known by its fruit. A good tree cannot a good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. So how does the fruit relate to the tree? The fruit is what the tree produces. How do we relate to that? We are seen as trees. And like the relation between a tree and the fruit it bears, it just means what you produce. And that can be actions, what come out of your actions, and even children. Okay? So now, let's relate the desire to be like God. What does that mean? What is God supremely known for? He gives life and he takes it. And no one else can. Right? So, regardless of what our mothers and fathers told us, that's just a little inside joke for growing up black, right? So, that, so, how should I phrase this? Okay. So, the desire to be like God is to give life, to be able to give life. And there's evidence for this. The first evidence is the behaviors and what happened immediately following them using this knowledge because it was not literal fruit, right? And it's having a knowledge. Having a knowledge is not where they erred. They erred, if you want. It is after having the knowledge, making a decision to use it, and then a physical act of putting the knowledge to use. That was forbidden fruit. Let's keep that in mind. Now, the behavior immediately following them putting this knowledge to use was they became fearful and ashamed, and they felt they were naked. Before they had no knowledge of what nakedness was. So that gives you an idea what type of act happened or what knowledge they were given. They tried to cover themselves. They hid themselves and tried to cover themselves. And when God confronted them, he came to Adam first because it was to Adam who he had given the law. Although he had knowledge of exactly what occurred, he went to Adam just to show us the order, right? And I don't need to get into that. Everybody understands that. Adam says, the woman you gave to be with me brought this to me. He asked the woman, what happened? The serpent deceived me. So, the sin was wanting to be like God, having that desire once being tempted with it. And that was creating life, even though there's deception there. And she even used the word deception because no man or woman can give life. That's still not true, right? But now we're going to go to the punishment. What supports this knowledge being a sexual act? One part of the punishment is for the man to bruise the woman in the head and the woman to bruise the man in the heel, causing him to slip. And if we pay attention, this plagues men and women in our community in relationships in most cases until this day and all throughout history. And it's just an ugly part of the cycle. Okay, so now the next part of the punishment definitely does give support for what I'm telling you. He says that the woman should bring forth children in pain. So what does that tell us? That tells us that was the forbidden knowledge and act they performed. And not only that, it sounds like that act that they did, out of it, she conceived. That's what it sounds like. Now, the craziest thing about this, the other thing we could say about this, there's also a scripture that says, man born of a woman is of a few days and full of trouble. What is this evidence of? What does this say? I think it says that was not how God intended life to come forth. And there's evidence for this, I believe, as well. It's a reason why it seems like the seed can be corrupted. Because remember, there was a point that God had to bring some sort of end to the world where he let very few people survive, some animals survive, flooded the world and started over to try to rid the world of sin. But of course it came right back. There was also a point where God said that his spirit could no longer strive with men, because men were evil. They had this capacity for evil. He could not dwell with them because, believe it, God dwells with you. He's within you, and he sees everything and witnesses it through your eyes. It's probably the only thing holding us up. Like I said, I don't believe that it was intended for us to have children in this way. Now, there's another time that the world became so corrupt that God decided he needed to come and walk the earth, come physical. And he didn't just appear here, he was born here so that he can be of flesh. Now, he was not born through any type of sexual act or conception. And most of us would say, well, of course, he's God. He's not going to be. But if it was the natural order, what would be the problem of that? The fact that he could have no father and mother, I get that. That's true. That would separate. That would be a great explanation of why he would be born that way and why man could be born another way. But remember, the scripture, man born of a woman is of a few days and full of trouble. There are different, supporting factors that seed corrupts or flesh kind of corrupts, right? And so not only did he come here, he came to tell the truth. People were twisting his words. They were becoming evil. They were doing things in his name or for profit. I mean, just many different things. It really offered a reset, and it would unleash a spirit and a model and a blueprint of how it should be done. And it would bring the truth on earth from God's mouth, right? Because people had been they had done so many things that it wasn't like in the beginning when God can directly, you can hear him. You can literally probably hear him, but now we can't, So it was like a reset. And one would think that by him resetting it, not just coming to earth for different reasons, but in coming that way, choosing to come himself, it was a reset to start the way it was intended from the beginning, to not bring forth child through sexual act. Now, do we know how, because God did say be fruitful and multiply, do we know if God was going to put the child there like he did with Mary? We're not sure. Do we know whether man and woman, after coming together, we could just create the child with our minds? Whatever happened, there's so much evidence that this was not the intended way to bring forth children. And that is why, even after that, it required death. And don't get me wrong, when God gave the punishments, when he said that man would now live and die because of what they had done, that didn't sound like a punishment. It was a law that was broken. So that was the law. And the serpent knew this, and that's why he tempted them. It's still what the enemy wants right now, your life. Even though it was in a sense taken at that moment, the mortality was gone, but men and women would come out, they would live and they would die. That was not, it was the cause of actions, not necessarily a punishment. So it was a broken law, and it was now what would take place. God said, now, because you've done this, you will surely die. It was not a punishment, right? So he didn't intend for us to die. But because it just gives evidence that because of that physical manifestation, we weren't recreating properly, immortally, and reproducing ourselves in a fleshly way that we can now live and die. Do you see where I'm going with this? You follow me? Now, let's go now and let's circle to the time that we are in. And let's understand why this mirror image to the original sin tells us that the time is late. And that's why we've seen things that we've never seen before. Remember the original sin? Wanting to be like God? How many times has he told you that he knows what type of evil dwells with men? He knows things that are going to happen. He knows the beginning and the end. He knows. You know why? Because at this point, there was another deception, another trap set for our people. And it is currently consuming us. And it is the original desire. They have our children. And some men who are fathers desiring again to be like God. Not because somebody hurt them, not because they're defending their lives, right? Just because they desire to be like God. Just like Eve desired to be like God, to give life. Our youth are aspiring to take life. Take it. For no other reason but taking it. No other reason. And this is rampant. So you see how it's full circle now? You see how both? In the beginning, we wanted to give life and be like God. Now we want to take it. Life, death, murder has happened over all of these years. But you cannot tell me that there has ever been a time where everyone, and I'm not saying every single person, but you know what I'm talking about, okay? Because there's power in our words, there's power in our actions. People know this. And they are scrambling too, because they know what it means. The end.